Welcome to the Top 200 podcast with your host, Herschel Foran.
Yeah, what's up everybody? This is Herschel Foran from High School Top 200 and this is the Monday morning meeting. Welcome back. As you know that I'm in a different location. In Islander families, when your relatives come to stay, you automatically get kicked out of rooms, and so someone's got my studio room, and so this is where I'm going to be doing it from for I don't know how long, but I'm here at my own work, at my other job, and it's pretty quiet, so you're not going to hear my daughters in the background or anything like that, but this has been another probably interesting week in First 15, and it's so strange because there's not very many games, pretty meaningful ones, but not very many games. And again, it's going to be another bit of a head scratcher in terms of rankings again. Obviously, a lot of you guys have already heard by now with Rotorua losing to Tauranga boys. Losing the Moascar Cup, as well as dropping out of the top 4 race for the Chiefs region. So that part of it's going to change. St. John's losing to Hamilton boys may stay the same. John McGlashan having a really good win over Southland boys for that Wellington Comp Final, which was really, really good. Such a good game to watch. And also, if you haven't seen the game, that Southland Otago game, it's on YouTube, and I'll post it up, but it's on YouTube, so go and have a watch of it, because I feel like there may be, out of that game, I think there's 2 New Zealand secondary school players out of that game, and maybe a Barbarian player or 2 out of just that one game, out of the Southland John McGlashan game, but it was such a entertaining game, that one. Watching also the Westlake Manurewa game was a good one, back and forth. Obviously that score didn't really reflect what the game was about or how it worked, and the turnout, but all the other games as well. I mean, the Auckland Comp, they had their close games as well, pretty much identical in terms of scores. The 1B also had an interesting matchup to get to their finals. The Wellington final that was played, Palmy boys and Napier boys, which was another one. So yeah, we did have some interesting games over this past week and weekend. The first one was Winded Up in Rathkill, that they had their traditional that they have every single year, and the clash that they had, and Winded Up won 41-17 over Rathkill, which was really surprising. And I think it does get to a point where at some point when you look at your season and it's not going the way that you kind of wished it did, and Rathkill dropping 2 games at the end of their season, which I think they should have won. Both of those games, which was the St. John's Hastings one as well as this Winded Up one. I don't know, I think sometimes boys just, I don't know, the passion, maybe it might just leave, and then you just don't have that same kind of enthusiasm. But one thing that I also like about Rathkill is that a lot of those boys are coming back next year, because they had a pretty young team this year. Obviously we've got to be led by Will Cole next year, but I think that Rathkill is going to be a lot better next year, and the way that they return, I think, is going to determine how strong this rugby program is going to be. And Rathkill is a different kind of school, they haven't been strong over the past some years that I've been doing this. They have gotten better, but they've slowly gotten better. I don't know how their rugby program works. I don't know if they have an academy. I don't know if they how much time or resources they put into their rugby program, but I know that it does get better, but it gets better slowly. Like Wiremu this year, Bartlett, I think, is a under 18 Hurricane player, legitimate open side, and maybe the best pure open side that they have in the Hurricanes region, because he has a lot of size and shape to him. He's got a huge work rate, real fit, and people may see it as a bad thing just being a pure 7, but like, to me, he's just a pure 7. And if you want someone just to do that job alone, then he'll be the perfect guy to pick. Next year, I think Will Cole would probably be their best player next year, and would push to be a New Zealand secondary school player as well. And so they do have that ability to bring that talent out. I just don't know how much depth they have in that school for top-rated, I guess, talent within the region, at least within the region. I don't know how much talent they have in terms of that. Wairarapa is kind of the same. They have a lot of guys that will be coming back next year, or half the team I think will be coming back next year, which is a good number. And even though in their Wellington region I thought that they would do a bit better, things just don't work out that way. You know, Hibs had a really good year this year, as well as St. Bernard's and that. So, you know, obviously you get pushed back somewhere, but you just kind of have to fight through it throughout the year and see what happens. And I thought they were in a pretty good position anyway to make that push in the Wellington region, in the Wellington Comp, but I don't know, just one of those things. The Westlake boys game and Manurewa. That last try was it did set it, like, you know, it did give it the look of a blowout, but it really wasn't. Even though Westlake started off really fast, had that first half easily to themselves, and I kind of think that Manurewa was lucky that they didn't, that there wasn't more points put on them in that first half, because Westlake boys controlled the whole thing, and I thought it was really smart in the way in which they did it, because they did actually do it up front, and it was surprising, because you would think with a big team like Manurewa, I mean, losing Jeremiah Westland wasn't ideal. I mean, that was early on, and even Dan Fonoti was probably the other one that they lost, which they really, really needed as well. But then you saw, like, what's his name, Lenz, Langa Slade, and Taimi were probably the three. Along with Fungale, I guess he would be another one too. We had the two locks, the 8 and the 7, really, really kind of lifting the team back and putting them back to where they needed to be in that second half, coming back, scoring a few times. But in that first half was the one that really, I think, changed them, really gave it a sort of disadvantage in terms of, like, chasing from behind. Like, Manurewa had to make up 21 points just to, they had to get 14 points to at least just get back in the race. But from that first half, they were just chasing the whole time. Really weren't even completing any kind of phases. They weren't stringing anything together. A lot of their ball was just stop-start kind of running. No one was running onto the ball. It was kind of like a pass then run, not pass on the run or anything like that. They tried to expand the field a bit too early before even kind of getting some go for it, even just up the middle of the field, which I thought they could have done. Westlake boys has a big side, especially in the forward pack, with Tristan Cook and Lee and, Bora and those kind of guys, even like Iggy, Watson, like those kind of guys that are heavy workload fellas in the forwards. But at the same time, I think Manurewa have that pack where they can wear you down. But it's the way that they wear you down is stringing together consistency in the forward pack, making sure that there's a direction, but it has to be a flow. I've always had the problem with Manurewa in the sense that I always felt that at 9, he took too long, and he takes too long all the time, and that's just his style of play, is that he'll get to the base of the ruck, look, then decide, instead of getting to the base of the ruck already with a setup runner going, and it's just continuous over and over and over again. Now, I don't know if he's been told that's the way to play, but with a forward pack and forward pack runners like Daniel, Taimi, Lenz, Jeremiah, Fungale, like guys like that, you don't want a halfback that looks both sides and then decides on what he's going to do. You just want it to go and just keep going and going and going. And so I always kind of looked at it that way, whereas I thought that maybe they could have had what's his name? Pritchard, I think his name is maybe they could bring him in to close out games, have a more senior role to close out the games. But in terms of starting out the game, they needed someone with pace and being more decisive and having not having a game plan, because he has a game plan, but a more rolling on with runners and rolling on with a string of phases that will all go forward on the ball kind of timing, and Rewa just didn't have that. And then you looked on the other side with Japanese kid Kato, I think his name is, and just the speed in which he works really put that forward pack 2 steps forward every single time, and it just worked really well for them. And it's hard to see Westlake beat Manurewa up in the forwards, but in the end, that's where it kind of got to. And then when that intercept try came, as Rewa were really picking up some momentum and some well worked phases, and they were just on the line, just getting ready. They were like gearing up, and it's funny too, because I think if that intercept didn't happen, obviously would have overplayed it too much. There would have been gaps out wide. I think that Manurewa could have won the game from then on if they had scored that try, because they already had no momentum, and then they had this continued momentum after that. If he did not score that intercept and the pass actually strung through and then went for a try, I actually think that Rewa would have won that game. But now that that's happened, I think because it's kind of strange the way that these region games are set up. I've got to find, I guess, a program on how everyone's ones work. But I think Westlake boys now play the top of the North in Northland, which their winner, which I'm guessing is going to be Whangarei boys. And then they play the winner of the Auckland Comp.
Jack, call him!
Of the 1A comp, which will be out of Sacred Heart or Kelston or St. Peter's. Actually, the other one that I wanted to talk about was Manurewa College, who's in the 1B finals. They'll be playing Northcote, I think, or were they in the finals? But Manurewa, I think, is probably a team, and they've been building. I think for about 3 years now. I've kind of watched them from afar in terms of how they're starting to build their program, but I actually think that Mahurangi Bay, maybe, I don't know if they have like exemptions for, I guess, for teams, just because of the way that teams are set out and the way that they I guess organize them. But Mahurangi College probably should have been in that 1A for the North Harbour, because I kind of found that throughout this whole season they always had big wins. They had big wins and they had big scores that are not really like they didn't actually fit the competition that they were in. I mean, they had Bruno Nola, who was in the front row, him, James Maturi, I think his name is. Actually, where's their team? I'll have a look for their team. Because I know that there's also, I think the Cooper brothers, Zach and Ben, who go really well at lock and blindside. Ben Cooper's also played at open side a few times this year. Dominic Courtney was another one. Harrison Mann, Gus Berger was, these are guys that rotate within in the team, because Gus Berger also played a bit of blindside and lock, but they're like consistent every single week. Cam Taylor's their first five, who's obviously really good. Him and Ty Connolly, who's in the under 18 Maldives team, who went to the under 18 Moulding camp as well, who's also real. I think they're just above that level of that 1B side, and I think they would have been more better off playing harder games, even if they were losing big ones like against Westlake or Manurewa or Whangarei or whatever. I think they would have got more out of this season playing up in that top one, to go against Rangitoto, to go against Takapuna, to go against Orewa, and really figure themselves out and figure out how good that they actually are and how good they can front up against some of these bigger teams. And so I always kind of thought that Mahurangi was kind of in a league that they didn't deserve to be in. I guess, because I know that they do things different in terms of ways of how you play for one competition or not. But I think that if they looked at their team from last year, knowing all these guys that were coming back and returning and how good they actually were anyway, they could have made a decision and said, no, this team actually might be too good for this one and they should probably go up. They won every game by so many points this year that I guess it just wasn't, to me, it didn't look like they were so competitive in the competition that they were in. In the 1A, they had St. Peter's and De La Salle. De La Salle was up at halftime, and it didn't look, from the reports that I read, it didn't look great for St. Peter's, and they weren't playing their best. And I had this feeling that De La Salle were going to win this game. And it wasn't really De La Salle, but it was more St. Peter's. I'm feeling like they are losing momentum in this year as the games get later on in the season. And they're not winning games the way that they were at the beginning of the season. And they're starting to just fall off a bit the way that I see it. Hopefully Officiale there, played a couple of times now on the wing. I don't know if they'll move him back to centre, because I think they'll still be scared a bit with his recovery. But I know that even on the wing, I think that you can set up Ciale a lot that where he can make a bunch of ground. He's not going to burn anybody off. He's not going to get big runaway tries or anything like that. But he is going to attract a lot of attention. Like, I would rather have, honestly, I would rather have an injured Ciale who's running at 70% than, a full centre who's fully healthy, that play a lot for, in a lot of these teams. Ciale is that good, and he makes that much of a difference to the team that I feel like he can play through it, and he can still be just as damaging as he ever is, that he always is on the field. And I would rather take an injured one than, someone who's fully fit and just not as good as he is. And I hope that he can be the change for that side, because I still feel like they're starting to slip off, and I hope they get it back on track, because I guess you would hate to go through the full season to lose your final, or even to win the 1A and not make it to the top 4 because you're just running out of juice, kind of thing. And they are such a good team, and they are such a well-balanced team, led from their two props. Not just the two props, actually the full front row. They're led by their full front row. Because even when you kind of look at it, I mean, just on their own in terms of their individual play, for example, when you got someone like Sika, who's Sika Pole, who's such a good ball runner, such an explosive guy, and one that knows how to get back and find the weakness in defenses with his return ball. He takes you from being on defense to offense and then some with just one run. And not like a lot of guys have been able to do that. I remember Alex Fido was kind of like that, was kind of a play like that. Obviously, Nella Tupou was another one. Taniela Tupou was another one. Especially for forwards, there wasn't really a lot of guys over the past year that I've been doing top 200 that were like that. They're not really like that. Like Vern Basin this year is kind of like that too. Him and Gus Brown have that effect. William Funahima have that kind of effect. But Sika just does it in a different way. He's just a lot more loose and explosive in the way that he gets it. And then you got like Korene, who has a solid scrumming style, a really balanced player all around the field, and just such a good leader. And then Caden, who I think is the New Zealand secondary school material next year. And Caden Tuivaiti just being year 12 and a hooker, with the way that he's played all year, he already looks like the guy that you want to look for next year in terms of like who's one of the top guys coming back, and he'll be kind of one of those guys. But even in saying that, you still have guys like Josh Smith, Charlie Bent, who I like a lot, him and Dylan Pattaya as well, and then obviously Blair, who's looking, Blair Tangi Fuimono, who's going to be in the running for New Zealand secondary schools as well, and has like a really strong case for why he should be there. This team is just too good to end it in a way that I feel like it's starting to fall, where they look like they're losing momentum, and I sort of have this fear that that's how their season is going to end, because the more that they keep playing, and if you see the game and look at the scoring patterns that are going on, it just doesn't look great right now. Kelston boys also are kind of on that same sort of on that same level, where maybe it's just getting too much for the team, but every win is just a grind out right now, and I actually don't know who's going to win. I mean I don't actually have a favorite for next week's final too, and I would only say St. Peter's because I have them ranked number 1 and say that they're the favorites, but like the gap between them is not that great at all. Like there's not a lot of like wiggle room for mistake for any of these sides, and the worst thing is just like, if someone brings their best game and someone has their worst game all on the same day, it's going to be a blowout, and it's going to look so uneven and so unorthodox in the way that it will turn out. But it can actually happen. Both teams are in that situation where you're one play away from having your worst game of the season, and then everything falls apart. Because remember, like finals footies to adults, we've seen this a lot, but to kids it's not the same thing. It's really different, and sometimes they don't get the full picture of what finals football even looks like or feels like. And so a lot of them that come into this going, oh, this is just a normal game, are probably going to be the ones that struggle a lot. And they'll struggle a lot with the fan, they'll probably struggle a lot with the stadium, not realizing how big it is or how daunting it can be, or just the energy that's in the stands. And both, like St. Peter's always have a really, really good following in terms of supporters. And the only bad thing about their cage, and this one thing that I hate about it when I go there, is that it's not big enough. For all the fans that turn up to that school, the cage is just not big enough. It's not like you have guys standing, and like if you've been there, and the guys from St. Bede's, they'll understand too, or the guys that have been there for like under 15 nationals and stuff like that, people stand across the road on the stairs and on the stands of the school, and they watch the game from over there across the road, because it overlooks the field a little bit. I mean, if I had mates that were in the buildings on sort of the opposite side, I would go and watch the games from up there, because you would have such a better view. But if you don't get there and you're on the fence of that cage, you're not really watching a good game of rugby. And so I always try and get there extra early if I know that I'm going to go to St. Peter's, just because I really want to watch the game, and it would be stink if you try to watch the game from like 3 people back, or from behind something, or across rows. Like, I don't want to do that. That's probably the only worst thing about going to the cage and watching a game. But having all those fans turn up and then some to a finals, and say it's like these boys have. I think a lot of the boys have to see the event for what it is, and respect all the efforts that they've done all year to get there, and not think of it as a normal game, but think of it as, this is going to be my best game of the year. Because even guys like Xavier Tito Harris and Joel and Cole Benson, like guys like that, I think are the guys that are probably going to stand up in this game, and they're probably going to be the ones that really have that control, especially on the Kelston side of it. And Kelston too is one of those teams that, and I think if like people didn't know, because people don't know what their roster is like, but even though they got sort of like a superstar in Xavier, Jarrell, Sammy Tuitupo, Jarrell Vaenga is year 11, and he's the number 8. Jarrell's the number 7. Sometimes Nate Brown is also there too. Sammy Tuitupo is blindside and lock at the same, different times. Malachi, Josiah, Josh Fuimonov, he's, I think he's alright. Then you got Xavier Leota, but like a lot of these guys, especially like Jarrell Vaenga and Xavier Leota, are both year 11. Jarrell Lua Falealo is year 12. I think Nate Brown might be back as well next year. But I think Shea Faonga is another one that's year 12. Seletier Sal's year 12. Bola Luau is a year 11. Then you got Ratu and Star are both year 12 as well. And so like a lot of these guys from Kelston boys are all coming back. I think Buster might be coming back. Peter and Dylan I think are also coming back. But even though you still got guys like Cole Brown and Regan Brown, Cole Benson and Regan Brown, and you're like 9s and 10s, and then Xavier at fullback, and even though you got your midfields are pretty young, there's still a team that is going to be able to perform even next year and have those guys that come back next year. And it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys sort of bounce back and what they're going to do in this finals game, because this could be a repeat even next year of what the finals could be, with how many guys are all returning back from both teams. The other games that they're going to have there as well is the St. Paul's versus McGlashan College, and I got hit up about my thoughts on the games for that 1B. And St. Paul's College was usually a league school, have done really, really well in rugby, and this year have really built a team that has been able to sort of compete with rugby players, which has been really good to see. As them actually compete with rugby players, and in all honesty have done better than rugby players in that league, and so they end up in the finals with McLean's. But the question I was asked was like, why don't the 1B get an opportunity, or they have the opportunity to play in the co-ed side? And I thought it was kind of interesting too, because I think if you're playing 1A, you should probably just go for the full nationals and leave the 1B to sort out the team that can compete for, they can compete for the co-ed, because you got schools like Southern Cross and Bonnie Downs and McLean's and Tamaki and all these good co-ed schools, in Otahu College, like all these good co-ed schools that can send a really good team that's not traditionally there at the end of the season in terms of like national finals or anything like that, but they probably should give them a chance to even prove themselves that they can do and compete against everybody else that is at their level too. And I thought that was a pretty good idea. I know the St. Paul's is an all-boys school, but it's always got to be some kind of exemption for stuff like that, just to get people playing. But that's where kind of like my idea was where I think you should implement the idea too, is is that if I had a tournament, I would be able to pick all the teams that I wanted to turn up, that I think from around the country be able to compete on that same level. But I think that's a good idea, where I think they should leave it to the 1B to sort that out and get the co-ed finals from that competition. Counties semi-finals, they got Tuakau, they played Alfriston College and the Tuakau won, and so they will be playing Hauraki Plains in the finals for their counties finals. Tuakau and Hauraki Plains were the two stronger ones in that competition anyway, and so it was just, I guess that was going to happen too. Hauraki should be the favourites in that, but they still have to put in a lot of work to be able to, I guess, make sure that Tuakau, don't sort of beat them up in that game, because, I mean, the game that I saw of Hauraki Plains live, like I've seen them on stream games throughout the season. The one that I saw live, they did crumple, and then they had a heavy loss against Tikawiti High School. So, they just got to bring their A game, to be honest. So I went to Hamilton Boys and St. John's. Honestly, it's St. John's worst game of the season. Last week was their worst game of the season, and then they doubled down, and this was their worst game of the season. And I felt so sorry for them, because they're now a legitimate rugby school. They've set up a program, they have an academy, and boys are starting to show up. Talented boys are starting to show up out of that program, and they're legit talented New Zealand rep quality players. Jack O'Brien had a mean game on Saturday, but I counted 5 drop balls in key situations where they should have scored tries, or not even just scored tries. 2 of them should have been scored tries. They should have been scoring tries in 2 of them. The other 3 were wide open spaces where if they had just caught the ball, and then if they just caught the ball and hit that same gap that they were aiming for anyway, they would have been on 3-on-1 situation on 2 of them, and then 2-on-1 situation on another one. And they were just dropping the balls. And usually on a wet day, you would have both teams making mistakes. Everyone's dropping the ball because it's wet and thing. Hamilton Boys were not that way. Hamilton Boys, I don't even remember them dropping a ball the whole game on their wet day, sloppy ball and everything. And St. John's it just wasn't good to see, because I've pretty much seen every St. John's game this year, and to end the season like that with their 2 worst games, and the games that actually matter, it just wasn't how I thought the season would end. And they had such great players this year, and to finish off like this was really disappointing to see. But one thing I kind of thought about was that when you're a school like St. John's and you're new to the rugby program, you're new to the rugby scene, you're new to the fact that you've got an academy, you're trying to build up this thing within the boys that are there now, coming through in the next year or 2, teaching them to be switched on, teaching them about the moment, teaching them about how they should conduct themselves throughout the week to prepare every single day for the final at hand. I feel like St. John's weren't ready mentally because they haven't yet been in those situations before. Whereas at Hamilton Boys, they prepare like that every single week from under 14s. And they know how it works on under 14s, they know how it works on under 15s, under 16s, second 15, and then into the first 15. And that culture of staying prepared is learned when you're in under 14s. Where St. John's just don't have that mentality right now. They're building it and it's getting there. And they have high quality players, but not everyone has that same, not everyone in that team has that same attitude and has that same readiness and has that same intensity to be able to play at that high level with that sort of mental sharp focus on what needs to be done. Because you got guys like Micah Fale who is ranked behind Ollie Mathis, but is the same talent as Ollie Mathis. And those two pretty much cancelled each other out in their game and were equally good. I don't even know who actually played better because they both have had massive games. Wesley Dada was also one of those guys that showed out as a year 12 against Aki Tui Vailalo from Hamilton Boys, and also played at that same level as Aki did. And he's year 12 and he's going to show out next year and should be a New Zealand secondary school contender along with Micah. And so so St. John's is putting out that same quality that Hamilton Boys is right now, but it just needs to be more consistent, and it's got to be every single year they've got to have that player that's a New Zealand secondary school standard player or close and then and thereabouts kind of range. Like even on Saturday when I was watching Tama Hodge, who I like a lot, and him and Kalis as year 12s, I thought, flip, these guys are going to be... Kalis I've always known from last year. Tama Hodge is another kid that I have kind of watched. He didn't really catch my eye last year, but this year, the way that he's been playing, I was thinking, man, this guy's, give him another 2 inches or so on his growth, coming back next year. He's going to be a monster, and he plays so big. He plays so physical. Yesterday, on Saturday, I was really impressed with what he did too. And so, having St. John's, having guys like that, because they got Kate Sua, who's coming back, Keone Albert, who's coming back, who's year 12 as well. Well, actually year 11, but he's a young year 12. All these guys, over this break and after this season, should all have that mentality of New Zealand secondary schools can be attainable from our positions. And they just have all those guys in that team. Halen's another one that him and Macca pretty much cancelled each other out too. As halfbacks, both year 12 halfbacks, and both of them just cancelled each other out. Both played really well, and it's going to be a battle next year to see them all, come back next year, both year 13s. It's great. Well, it would have been great for me if I was going to be doing it next year, but these are all the guys that you should watch out for next year. Tauranga winning yesterday. So Hamilton Boys will play Tauranga Boys down in Tauranga now that Tauranga have won. Whoever the Hamilton winner was going to be was always going to travel anyway. And so that's where the final was always going to be played, was over in Bear Plenty. So rankings are going to change. I don't know how much they're going to change. I don't know how high Tauranga Boys is going to move up. But they do have a big say on how they've done this year. But congratulations to them. I don't know when the last time they held the Moascar Cup was, but whenever you even have a chance to play for it, it's a big opportunity. And most boys should just, just want to be in that situation where they at least have a chance to win it. But that's going to be a big game over in Tauranga next week. I'd love to go see that game, but I think I'll be somewhere else. There were some other games that I wanted to go see. I can't remember. I'll probably be travelling anyway, but I can't remember which one it was. Manurewa won the finals for Division 1 here in Hamilton. Regan Arson just killed it, as usual. Rotorua High School won the second division finals over Te Aomuru, which is really big for a school like Rotorua, who was only started up, 2016 was their first year, I think it was, in terms of high school. They started off with a junior high school first and now into high school. Tikawiti lost in their finals against St. John's Development. Morrinsville won theirs. Morrinsville College. Mount Maunganui put on a massive score against Western Heights, which is, I thought Mount Maunganui was going to win, but not like that. Otumoetai College got sort of revenge back on Taupo Nui Aotea College, because the last game I went and saw them, Taupo won, and Otumoetai just did not look good. Not what all their other scores showed them what they were and how much they were winning by, and they just went unbeaten. Then they came against Taupo, and then I don't know. I guess they had their worst game. The game that I showed up to was their worst game, because they 34-12 was their score, and that's a big turnaround from what it was before. So Mount Maunganui and Otumoetai College, they'll be in the finals. Actually, depending on where that is played, I might go and watch that game. I wish that game was on a Friday. That would be cool too. Just so I can get as much games as I can, but no, just the way that is. Whanganui Collegiate played against Whanganui High School in their annual, their traditional games that they have. Whanganui Collegiate won 89-3, which is predictable, really. It's a game they've been playing for a while, and it's only become lopsided in the last 9 years or so, where, I guess Collegiate has implemented, a lot of, a bigger rugby program. Napier Boys High against Palmy. Napier Boys High won. And I've got to look up to see how the Hurricanes thing is supposed to work, because I don't fully understand it. I was under the impression that, and I don't know why, but I think Fielding and Hastings are waiting for the finals to finish, and then they play Silverstream in town. Then the winners move on. And I think Gisborne's supposed to play Napier Boys or something like that. I don't even know. I've got to find out. To find out how it really works, I've got to find out. But and this is the stupid thing, is that they never actually put it out to the public how the regions work and how everyone, is supposed to get to the final, to the top four. But I'll search it out and I'll let everyone know. The only finals that wasn't played was the one that was Nelson and St. Bede's, which I was told was going to be pushed back to the 27th. And then they must have like an early game against John McGlashan, who won the finals, because so they can fit in the frame of the top four as well. But Shirley Boys won their plate finals against Marlborough. Christ College won against Selwyn in the bowl finals.
Use it, boys! Go, Johnny!
John McGlashan beat Southland boys 36-27, and even the Dunstan Waitaki game, I'll post that one up too because that one was live stream as well, which was such a good game too. I actually had Dunstan winning, and Waitaki just came through. Waitaki's still got a really young side, and a majority of these guys can still be back next year too. And Waitaki's actually building sort of a rugby stronghold there, and it's building slowly, but it is building. And they're getting more island boys there. They're getting more size, they're getting more shape and explosive players with a lot of hard-working, rugged kind of players in there as well. And it shouldn't take too long for this team to actually get up there where they're really competing with guys like Southland boys and Otago and that. But John McGlashan, it was shaky there at the beginning. I thought Southland had a hold on the game, especially when John McGlashan came out straight away off the first line out, almost drove their way to a try. And then even just within the next 2 minutes, Southland just fought their way back so easily and then ended up scoring. And there were so many moments in these games where I kind of thought John McGlashan was going to lose, and then it just, then they just did what John McGlashan do. And I think I have them right in terms of they are a top 5 team in the country. They have proven it sort of week after week, and a lot more respect has to be given to that Highlanders comp and what those boys do down there. And it showed with Southland beating King's College in King's College home ground. John McGlashan's, gone. They've done so much throughout this whole season that they deserve to have that kind of respect as well. And so, waiting until that final with the Miles Toyota Championship to be played, and whether it's St. Bede's or whether it's Nelson, John McGlashan will be waiting. It's going to be interesting to see what that's going to be like, because heavy favourites are John McGlashan to win that South Island spot for the top 4. I know Nelson and St. Bede's are really going to prepare to not only win the finals but have that quick turnaround and really get stuck into John McGlashan as well. And if the best story comes out of this, the best story in terms of rugby wise, is that John McGlashan comes out of it and they represent the South Island in the top 4 for the first time ever, I think. And we all like those stories, but you still have to get on the field and play it. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. I am going to do as much homework as I can and trying to bring as much content as I can as well. Getting used to this, I still don't know. People have still been asking me what I'm going to be doing. I still don't know. A few more offers have come in, a new offer has come in from someone else totally different. And so there have been some companies that have hit me up as well, asking me to sponsor and to really get into it just so that I can stay here in New Zealand and keep it going in New Zealand. But all things are sort of up in the air, and I'm really just fighting with my pride my New Zealand pride to stay and do this just for New Zealand, because I don't really want to take it offshore at all. It was always based for New Zealand. It was always for New Zealand kids, for exposure in New Zealand players, and it wasn't meant to gut out New Zealand talent. And so I really want to stay. I don't know I just need to really sit down with at the end of the season and try and really figure it out what's the best for not only just for like myself, but even for the New Zealand players, that if I do sign off somewhere else and offshore, that I'm able to set up better pathways for New Zealand players to have professional rugby careers wherever they are in the world. And that will be like sort of the main focus if I do sign offshore. But I have been hit up with New Zealand offers and New Zealand companies that they say that they'll sponsor me and advertise with the company on my website, and even with my ideas for live streaming, because that's what I want to do. I've always wanted to do it, but next year is that's the direction I want to take it in. If I stay here, is that I want to live stream all the games, like all games, even ones that people don't tend to think are good games. I want to be able to bring them. Like, I think the 1B competition in Auckland should get live streaming every game that they play. Building content, making highlight clips and tapes for everybody, all the players, all that kind of stuff. That's my vision. Live streaming games is great, but kids don't consume content that way. They consume it in 30 seconds to 40 seconds to a minute to 2 minutes in terms of highlights, and distribute it that way. And the faster we can get more content out there, shorter content that is being able to be consumed more, with more views, being able to be shareable on these different platforms like IG and Reels and TikToks and stuff like that, then the better it is for all of our players. And so that's what I want to do: live stream games, then just create different kind of content to make sure that our players get seen by everyone around the world. And it's by small little concepts here and there for all of our players, so they can all be seen. That's kind of my idea. I want to be able to go into the CNI and make sure the CNI games are all live streamed, even with the Super 8, all live streamed. Wellington, Christchurch should be one that's the whole competition should just be live streamed, every single game. And then even down there in Otago, I think it's time that we should be seeing Dunstan all the time. We should be seeing Waitaki boys, Mount Aspiring, Wakatipu. We should be seeing every year. We should be seeing John McGlashan and King's High School play against each other in traditionals. Every year we should see Obies and Southland boys. Every single year we should see those traditions. For me, I would just live stream every single game if we could, and just have a separate channel alone for First 15 rugby, just for just continuous cycles of rugby games, one after the other. And we have so much content that it can be done. It just needs someone to just believe that they can do it. And I feel like that's me. I feel like I can bring, with the help of obviously finances and people around that believe in that same vision, and big time sponsorships to do it. I think that I can do it, and so that's what I want to do, and be able to edit and control the content going out for all the kids, that they all have their own little highlight reels themselves that they can share, and that hopefully they can get more opportunities. But that's kind of where I'm at. That's all I got for today. I've got more content coming out. I'm just finding bits and pieces of places where I can continue to create more content and put stuff out on the website. But that's me, Herschel Fruin. Later, ball.
Did it go through?